further action on climate change. So there's a lot of options on the ballot if climate is your thing.
Yeah, if that mattered to you. And Sarah, again, not to hurt your feelings as well, but the NDP no longer on the board at all here. And I mean, things that were flipping around, so maybe that's not where we end up, but that would be disappointing.
I think absolutely would be disappointing across the board. I think at one point we were up 3, and some of those are some still pretty tight, close races. So let's see where we end up tonight. But it is disappointing not to be on the board right now.
Yeah, because Atlantic Canada was a place where, to be honest, the NDP had done pretty well in the past with previous MPs, and so there would be an expectation that there would be some inroads to be made there. You'll notice on your screen that there is one riding that is a block riding. That's because one part of Quebec is in a different time zone, Gaspésie-Île-la-Madeleine, and Rafi Boudjikanian has been following the Bloc Québécois around in a minivan for the past week. And we appreciate that, Rafi. What is the expectation there tonight, Rafi?
Shout out to my camera guy who was driving that minivan, so that helped a lot. You know, this is probably something they're hoping to reproduce in where most of the time zones are in Quebec, like having a candidate who can unseat a cabinet minister. It's kind of a dream for Yves-François Blanchet because Gaspésie-Île-de-la-Madeleine is Diane Leboutillier, the National Revenue Minister's riding, and he had high hopes for Gaspésie. He visited it a lot during the campaign. Guy Bernatchez had run there in 2019, only lost by about 2 percentage points, so it was a tight race. And that's kind of been the theme of their campaign, visiting liberal-held ridings that were tight races. He's hoping that he'll see this a lot again over the course of the evening. We actually don't have live images of Yves-François Blanchet watching this in his hotel room like we do of Justin Trudeau. The party has told us that will not be happening, but if I had to guess, I would say there is a smile on his face right now as he's taking this early result in with his 4 children and his common law partner next to him in a Montreal hotel room. You know, he did start this campaign talking about a dream of 40 seats, and then he kind of became more quiet about a goal toward the end. I asked him about that yesterday, and he said, you know, 40 is still the dream. Anything above 32 is a nice evening. So that's evidently what he's hoping for at this point. Of course, that question at the English language debate did give him a bit of a boost, but as the CBC poll tracker showed last night, that boost had not translated into a higher number of seat projections yet.
Okay, dreams change through election campaigns, Rafi. That's what we learned there. Thank you for that. And to remind you what the campaign looked like for Yves-François Blanchet, it was sort of a bumpy start. And as Rafi pointed out, that English debate gave him a little bit of new life. Here's his campaign, 36 days and 36 seconds.
We have to protect our values. We have to promote our language. There is absolutely no issue, no topic, no jurisdiction, which I believe Quebec should not hold. That is sovereignty. Quebec transforming its own natural resources, using its research centers. It is so clear that what they say about Quebec is not very sincere. Those laws are not about discrimination. They are about the values of Quebec. Anybody that wants to be a Quebecer on the territory of Quebec is a Quebecer.
Okay, that gives you a sense of how the Bloc campaign unfolded. Right now, they're only on the board with 1, but that's, of course, because polls have not closed in Quebec yet. Those close at 9:30 Eastern, as they do from Quebec all the way through to Alberta. And that's when 262 seats come into play, and things on that map are going to start to change pretty dramatically. But this is what it looks like at this hour. And as you can see, the Conservatives are picking up seats as we leave Atlantic Canada. That was the goal. The Liberals have lost, but this probably isn't the worst place for them. Maybe I'll just quickly ask David Cochrane that before I go to Travis Dhanraj. Remind me what the Liberals were looking for coming out of Atlantic Canada?
They want to be between 24 and 26, and the math that we sort of spelled out at the start of the night, and we just made it a round number and went with 25, because they had 26 in the last election. They picked up Jenica Atwin through defection. They're hoping to get her through election, but right now they're down overall in the region, and there's some interesting stuff.
I'll most likely get bored.
In one of the, to
I'm already bored.
We don't have the graphics, so it's going to
Sure,
tell you
yeah,
what's
yeah,
going
yeah.
on. So in long range
get some
mountains,
chat
Goody
going.
Hutchins is in a really tight fight with Carol Anson.
By which I mean,
There we go. We have it. Look at the People's
send a
Party of
chat to
Canada's
myself.
number,
There it is.
1,132. That is well more than the margin by which Goody Hutchings is ahead of Carol Anstey. But when we go to Costa Bay,
Goody
Central,
Hutchings.
Notre Dame,
I'm not.
where
I'm gonna
Conservative
not be
candidate,
insulting
Nicholas
him. This is
Small
not
leading Scott Sims
insulting her. It's
by
just
over 1,000 votes now.
a nice
There
name
is
and
no
stuff.
People's Party of
Because no,
Canada
I don't have a
in that
very.
particular riding. So it's
I'm not in the
having an
mood
impact
for
in
a
Sable
deep,
Liberal seat on the
nuanced
West Coast.
political
It is
anything.
not having an impact in Costa Bay, Central, Notre Dame.
What am I in the mood for? I don't know. We're
Canada,
just streaming
and
this
it's siphon away that protest
just
conservative
cuz.
vote, and it's hurting Scott Sims right now.
Right, and that's why looking at those percentage points for the People's Party of Canada or any
Trudeau.jpg.
other party, outside of the 3 or 4 main ones, becomes important because it can block parties or help parties. As
Well,
just so
we're here with
give us an example.
Canada
Travis
Decides.
is in Saskatoon at the People Party headquarters
2021.
there. And I know, Travis, for the past, since the beginning, Maxime Bernier, the leader of that
There we
party,
go.
has said that this is a real movement. This is a
I don't
real
have to be
thing
confined to a
happening.
small
What is
square
the
anymore.
sense from
I can
them about
spread
why
my
they want
arms
to
to my
see
camera's
to prove
full
that to Canadians tonight?
diameter.
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is seats. They don't just want to split votes with other parties. They want seats. They want representation in the next sitting of Parliament. So Maxime Bernier, I was talking to him yesterday in Alberta. He is very optimistic. He says that he was even surprised by the size of some of these rallies that he has been at. Let me show you where we are right now. We are in Saskatoon. I have made it here. That over there is the hotel that they have a setup in the ballroom, but actually they are hoping for a big rally out in this field here. So they've got 2 different setups. There's not a lot of people here right now, but that could quickly change. When I was in Westlock, Alberta yesterday, about 20 minutes before the rally started, there were 2 people there. About 5 minutes beforehand, hundreds. So that is what they're hoping will happen tonight. They've also got a stage set up here where they will be hearing remarks from Maxime Bernier as well. But Rosie, that is really what they want. They want seats. They think that they can win some in Alberta. Certainly, when I was at that rally yesterday, there was a lot of support, and this is a movement. He says that this is about fighting for fundamental freedoms. Obviously, he's been talking about vaccine passports a lot. That is one of the big selling points for a lot of people that I have been talking to that are supporting Maxime Bernier. And there was a gentleman that I was talking to in London, Ontario, who actually showed up at an Erin O'Toole rally, who said he had been a Conservative voter for years and is now looking at Maxime Bernier's party because he feels as though the Conservatives have shifted too far to the left. So we'll see what happens tonight, but certainly they're hoping for a few seats to turn purple this evening.
Okay, Travis Danraj, who's made his way to Saskatoon for us tonight. Thanks, Travis. Also say that, the People's Party of Canada has been trying to take advantage of some of the things that Travis was talking about there around the pandemic, lockdown, and masking. If they can't translate some of the frustration and anger people were feeling around that issue into seats, it'd be hard to see how they do that in a future election unless some other issue takes hold.
There we go. It's
now,
a bit
I
better.
want to just explain something that you're seeing at the bottom of your screen that may confuse you, because it sure confused
Or
me.
is it?
And that
I don't
the
know.
number 9 there for
The number 9
Conservative
really
Party. What
confuses
we're
me too.
told
Please
is that
explain that.
Elections Canada mistakenly inputted some data before polls closed in a different part of the country. Polls closed at 9:30 Eastern from Quebec to Alberta. We're not going to tell you where because the polls are still open, and we don't want that to influence anything about your vote because it's
Keeping things.
very early. It's in the Liberal numbers. I'm sorry, it's in the Liberal numbers. It's very early.
I'm sorry,
So,
what?
those Liberal numbers are up 1. But again, those are early results that we actually shouldn't have at this stage. So we're not going to tell you where that's happening. But the Liberals are actually at 23 with polls closed in Western Canada. The Conservatives leading in 9, and the Bloc on the board with that one riding that is closed in Quebec, just to keep everything straight in our heads. Okay, let's go to Ashley Burke. She's at the Liberal headquarters in Montreal with a guest, Ashley.
Rosie, I'm with Liberal candidate Melanie Joly. She's also the National Campaign Co-Chair, and when Parliament dissolved, she was a cabinet minister. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Joly. Can you start by telling us what your expectations are for tonight, and as well, what do you make of the results coming out of Atlantic Canada so far?
Well, we know it is a tight election. There are lots of tight races, a lot of three-way races. That will be the case all across the country, certainly also in Ontario and BC. And so people are still voting in certain parts of the country. So at this point, the choice is clear. It's between a progressive government, that is the Liberal Party of Canada, or the Conservatives who want to take us backwards on childcare, on the environment, and obviously also on gun control.
Looking at Ontario, where the polls are proposing
Have to agree with you there,
what
I
has
guess.
been the strategy in Ontario?
Well, clearly, actually, we've
In
been
terms of
also making
what
sure
she
we
just
have
said.
a strong electoral, a strong game on the ground. In many of the 905 ridings, like I was saying, it's a three-way race, but we need to make sure that we get out our vote. It was tight in 2019. It will be tight again, but we think also that in certain ridings we can pick up seats. And so I think our message has been clear also when it comes to, like I was mentioning, the gun control, the environment and all. Clearly also in the 905, Bill Blair has been campaigning a lot for us. We know there's been
I can make it better if I
in the
really
region.
I care
Security of
to.
Canadians is preoccupying, and so that's why this is something that we wanted to
Can
make
go
sure that
fully
people knew
immersive.
that Erin O'Toole has been supported by the gun lobby and many other special interest groups.
What's
which
that you
supported
say?
him during his leadership campaign, provided him funding, provided him volunteers, and now he has made promises to them, and he has to keep them.
How important is Quebec tonight?
Wow.
Very important to my heart, actually. But more than that, it is an important race. It is an important race because obviously there were 35 seats before the writ drop, and we hope that we can win some seats more. And in that sense, we've had a very positive campaign here, and we can be extremely proud of what we've done for Quebecers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was Liberal candidate Melanie Joly. Rosie?
And campaign co-chair, which we can tell by the talking points there that we got in a lot.
Where can I go that
Of
won't be too intrusive?
Andrew, let's
I'll
hear
just
some
kind of
opinions.
hover around and just
in Prince Edward Island, in
Just-
Cardigan, sure bet.
just hover around.
Lawrence Macaulay, we can project, will be elected in this riding.
Wait.
I mean, for the Veterans Affairs Minister, I mean,
They
sixth,
predict that-
11th certainly have it once again. Not a surprise. But
I'm way too
now,
easily
I mean, not to
amused.
say that he's always had an easy time securing the victory over the decades that he has been the MP in this riding. You know, in 2000, the
That's
year
right.
that Jean Chrétien won his third majority, Lawrence Macaulay only won by under 300 votes.
Mhm.
So he knows a close call when he sees one.
Yep.
Tonight's not one of those occasions, though.
Yeah, you never take it for granted. That's what
Good.
they tell you.
That's
We're
good.
going to go back to Charlottetown PEI to talk to Carrie about how events are unfolding there. Carrie? Oh, you have a guest. Off you go.
Well, I do. I was just going to say the election before that, Lawrence Macaulay won by, I think it was 99 votes. So there were some close races, but those are kind of ancient history now. Anyway, I am joined here by someone who actually knows PEI's political history fairly well and who's graciously joined our election watching party here. PEI Premier Dan.
Oh,
Thanks so much for
that's-
stopping by.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
What's it like to watch an election as a sitting PEI Premier? Because you have these agreements with the government that was in Ottawa, which, I mean, we don't know where things will land tonight.
Oh, look, my job as Premier is to work with whoever is elected to do the best we can for Prince Edward Island tonight. I am mostly just a fan. I'm a Canadian political junkie who is watching a very uncertain election and wondering how it's going to turn out. But my job will be tomorrow to work with whoever is declared elected, and I can't wait to do that and to move PEI forward.
Most of your time in office, you've been dealing with a minority government in Ottawa. So you don't have anything to compare that to, but I'm curious if we do end up with another
Right.
minority, or
You need
if that were to change,
some
do you
lulls
think
in there.
that gives the provinces any
More than
leverage
usual.
in that situation?
Look, I think my own experience in a minority and then working with a minority parliament in Ottawa is that more parties are more eager to get to the table to talk about finding solutions for the challenges that Canadians and Islanders face. So once again, whatever hand we're dealt, we will work within those parameters to do the best we can here. We did have over 30 First Ministers meetings with the Prime Minister during my short time, only 2 years and a little bit in office. So a lot of that due to COVID, of course. But I would hope that relationship will continue, whoever is the Prime Minister. We have a lot of important issues that we're facing here in PEI, and we need a good federal partner.
I ensured that every single person I knew cast their vote for the brilliant PPC. I just said that, captured on video. It's not true, though. Can't tell a lie, except for sometimes. Why am I talking? But the answer is yes.
Probably lying to you. I think it's a bit of a dog's breakfast all over. I thought all day we'd probably end up close to where we were when we started, which would make a lot of Canadians wonder why we're even here. But who knows? We'll see how the votes are tallied across the board, and just looking forward to seeing how that all unfolds.
All right, there you go. Political pundit and PEI Premier Dennis King. Back to you, Rosie.
Great. Well, he seems like a right old gent.
Ian, let's get some results.
I'll tell you the political.
Yeah, but oh, it's Ian Hanomansing. He's been around forever.
We're heading in and take a look at what's happening right now in Fredericton. For the first time this evening, we're starting to see a number of votes, and I've been watching this lead go back and forth. Jenica Atwin, just a tiny lead right now. One of the frustrating things for the Liberals in Fredericton is that there is no potential split on the right. There's no People's Party candidate in Fredericton. There are, of course, other candidates on the left, but right now, Jenica Atwin in the lead. Let me tell you, St. John.
See, I'm already thinking of like offensive things that I shouldn't say, because I'm like, oh, this riding is like all women running, and it's already past the time.
And one more
Why do I ever
elected
speak?
MP in New Brunswick, Rob Moore, is going back to the House of Commons. He's won the last.
Yeah, I
last
haven't
six, so now sixth in the last
figured out if
He's
that
won
is a
Fundy Royal.
YouTube settings thing or a
Thank you for all that. Let's give you a sense
Streamlabs
of where things stand right
thing.
now on the map. You can see lots of swaths of red, but yes, the Conservatives have made some inroads here as we leave Atlantic Canada, leading or elected in 9. Remember, they only had 4 in the last election, and the Liberals at 24, which means that they are coming out of here down a little bit. The Green Party not on the board, the New Democrats not on the board. These would be of some concern to those parties as they try to pick up some seats and build towards what is about to happen very shortly, because as we move into the
What's
next
gonna happen?
half hour or so, we're going to start to get some big results.
I'm
From
scared.
Quebec all the way to Alberta, including the territories, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. All of
Oh,
that
I am
still to
heckin'
come. As you
scared.
can see, lots still ahead on a very exciting evening here, an important election for this country. Canada votes 2021. More results coming in about 30 minutes.
All right. Well, yeah, exactly. You know, as they said, it's going to be a while, and I'll probably get bored, but I'm like, whatever, I'll leave this on and mess around, and people can tune in and out, or just out, or, yeah, I'll work on some other stream stuff.
More options and more immediate help for all families.
We want to put the burden on those that are at the very, very top so we can invest in the solutions that people need.
We have to protect our values. We have to promote our language.
Our country is suffering. It needs leadership.
We believe in freedom, so we believe in freedom of choice.
All right.
You have a choice. Empower families.
Protecting the environment.
Pick a voice.
Compelling vision.
Now, we all know the usual question on everybody's mind is, what the heck is up with the PPC and Conservatives? At least I'm wondering that, because I don't know anything. And we'll find that out soon enough.
You have heard the promises for your family, your community, your country, and your world. We are living through an unprecedented time, fighting a 4th wave of the pandemic. Now you get to make your choice about the future direction of Canada.
Okay.
The CBC News Decision Desk is watching ballots come in. Our team is here preparing to bring you all the results all night, no matter how long it could take. Across the country, from east to west, as we learn which party will form your next government. Canada, this is your choice. This is your vote. This is election night 2021.
Well, I think it's election
Hello,
night
I'm Rosemary
2021.
Martin, and welcome to Studio 42, our
The
Canada
Maverick
Votes
Party in
election
Alberta.
headquarters. This is a historic night for Canada. Every election is, but this one comes during
Is
a pandemic.
really
It's a test
historic.
of the very strength of our democracy. And what happens over the next few hours will decide what a post-pandemic Canada will look like and shape the nation. Our team here with me will bring you the results and analysis each step of the way. We have you covered from coast to coast to coast with our reporters on the ground, with the major federal party leaders as they get set to watch this night play out.
There we go. I won't
and
touch it anymore.
battleground ridings where the voters are casting ballots, waiting to see who comes out on top. Hello and welcome to Canada Votes 2021. The evening has already started, but things are about to get pretty intense and fast and furious as seats will start to come in a few minutes' time from Quebec all the way through to Alberta. It is 9 p.m. Eastern. The polls will close at 9:30. Here is what the country looks like so far. Atlantic Canada and at least one riding in Quebec have weighed in. The Liberals
Is the country
coming
changing
out
what
of
it looks
Atlantic
like tonight?
with leading or elected in 23 ridings. That extra number you see on the board, some initial results that weren't supposed to come out from Ontario, so we'll put that aside for
Oh, I
now.
see. They're painting it red and blue.
Conservatives are up,
That's kind of
leading or
cool.
elected in 9, and the Bloc Québécois registering with the only riding that has closed in Quebec, the riding of Gaspésie-Île-de-la-Madeleine. Every party at this stage has lost seats with the exception of the Conservative Party of Canada. They are up seats as we leave Atlantic Canada. Is that a sign of some sort of trend? Should we watch for that to develop through the course of the night?
No, we shouldn't
Sure
watch.
should. And we should also know, of course, that the Conservatives would be happy for pickups as they leave Atlantic Canada. The Liberals, though, probably
That's
not
an
panicking
astute
quite yet.
assumption, I
Let me
think.
show you a little bit of what the vote share looks like, because that too tells a bit of this, the vote change rather, that too tells us a bit of the story of where things have moved and where they have gone. So yes, yes, the Liberals have gone up. The Conservatives have gone right up 4.5%. But look at where that is coming from. The Green Party down 9 points, almost 10 points in Atlantic Canada. A lot of that support has gone to the Conservative Party and some elsewhere, but most of it, frankly, to the Conservative Party. This would be incredibly disappointing given that the Green Party has had success in Atlantic Canada provincially and, of course, had one seat in Fredericton until they lost it when she crossed the floor. The People's Party of Canada also a
That's
factor
just
in this vote
bullshit. You
share,
can't just
up
take somebody's seat because they
3.2%. That
got
is
out of
a
it.
rise from the last election too. Another part of the story that we should keep
Frickin'
our eye on as the
politics.
polls close through the country. Let me show you what the seat change looks like now as we leave.
Show me what the
Atlantic
feet
Canada.
change looks like.
Because as I said, everyone lost.
Oh, seat
seats
change?
except
Did she say
the
seat?
Conservatives.
I heard
This
feet.
may not be a situation where the
Whatever.
Liberals are worried yet, but they have to hope that this trend does not continue as we wait for more seats.
I wanna
and
see the
polls to
feet
close and start
change.
reporting. There you go.
Not
That
in a
tells
weird
you
way.
The story already as we come out of Atlantic Canada. The Liberals down 3, the Conservatives up 5. NDP not on the board at all. They've lost St. John's. They are losing St. John's East and Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Greens down that 1. Okay, we are going now to
All right.
Andrew Chang.
We knew the Conservatives would
Yeah, so
most likely
Quebec is
gain.
certainly one of those ridings that
So
I'm
how
paying,
bad is
very
it?
close attention to.
Hopefully
And, you know,
not
at the
that
outset
bad.
of this evening, I was talking about how you can divide Quebec into 3 broad regions, and I'm going to take you through a couple of them. The Quebec City region, this was conservative country in 2019. Dramatic gains in this part of the province for the Conservatives would be something of a surprise.
Best
But
damn
let's see
conservative
what kind of
country.
impact that the endorsement of the popular
So you
Premier
reckon
François
having
Legault for
yourself an
Conservatives has
ideological
this,
argument.
election night tonight. But look at the island of Montreal. So in 2019, everything went red, except for a splash of Bloc. You've got a hint of NDP. But the Liberals want more. They want to build support off the island, both north of the island and on the south shore as well. And they're going to have to go through the Bloc Québécois to do it. Now, one riding that they're targeting in that vein is the riding of Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Just last week, in fact, both the Liberal and the Bloc Québécois leaders were in this riding campaigning on the very same day, at different times of day, mind you, but at the same park, basically within 50 meters of each other, polling virtually deadlocked in this riding. I mean, in 2019, the Bloc only won by a few percentage points, but the Liberals need to pick up a riding like that if they have any hope, any path to a majority.
Okay, and frankly, if they want to keep a minority, they also need to hold those seats and do some pickups in Quebec, especially if you're coming out of Atlantic Canada short. Adrian is going to be watching the prairies. What are you watching for there, Adrian?
Yeah, you bet. Of the 62 ridings, we know the Conservatives currently hold 54. They're coming out of Atlantic Canada, maybe pretty confident they're going to hang on to those. But two trend lines to keep an eye on. The People's Party of Canada, to what degree does that peel away any support from the Conservatives? And in Alberta in particular, in the cities, bottom line, does anger with Jason Kenney in any way translate to trouble for Erin O'Toole? So if we look specifically at Calgary, let's say Calgary Skyview, for example, currently held by Jag Sahota. This is a place where the Liberals have poured a lot of attention. Georgia Hall just got endorsed by Mayor Naheed Nenshi today. Alberta is very much thinking about Jason Kenney today. This is the day those restrictive, what do they call it, restriction exemption program comes into effect, a vaccine passport by any other name. So he might be front of mind when people go to the polls in Calgary Skyview.
Okay, thank you for that, Adrian. And Ian will be looking at Battleground Ontario.
Yeah, the most populous province in the country, and
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
that has the most ridings. And when you look at the party standings from 2019, what stands out is 79 Liberal seats, not only the majority of seats that were won in Ontario, but also critical, of course, to the Liberal government, minority government, last time around. And this time around, the Liberals are facing kind of encroachment on both fronts, from the left and the right. So I want to show you quickly two ridings that kind of illustrate that, two-term MPs for the Liberals seeking re-election. So first of all, Richmond Hill, Majid Johari won this by only 112 votes last time around, and he's up against a formidable opponent, Kostas Benegakos from the Conservatives, who held this seat from 2011 to 2015. And in Toronto, Danforth, Julie de Bruzen is hoping to win a third term, but up against Claire Haxel, really well known.
The Bruiser, as they call her.
Riding. It is strategically important to the NDP to win this back, symbolically important as well.
It sure is. Okay, so we will wait for results as polls close at 9:30 Eastern in those parts of the country, so in just over 20 minutes. Some people in these parts of the country are facing long lines. Elections Canada says don't leave if you're in that line. David Common is at Elections Canada, one of their distribution points, and he's got some information for us on that. David.
Yeah, absolutely, Rosie. And I want to talk to those people who are in line right now, but also taking a look at those mail-in ballots, just to sort of peel back a bit of the process, because we've never had this many people do mail-in ballots. You may recognize this, brightly colored, and I'll explain why in a second, but you basically put your ballot in this package and it ends up heading to Canada Post. The reason it is brightly colored like that is because on election day, they actually send Elections Canada workers to the main post office in Ottawa, and they search all over the place before the deadline, trying to find any ballots that have been missed. What do those ballots look like? They look like this. So this is the actual outer envelope that you put it in. Don't worry, Caroline Pellerin is not a real person. This is a sample ballot, and there's someone watching me like a hawk right now to make sure I don't walk out of here with it. They're very big about integrity here. So you would put your ballot like that, voting for Member of Parliament specimen, according to this, inside that inner envelope and then into the outer envelope. And that is what a mail-in ballot looks like. Now, just to give you an idea, what happens is they
completely missed the
here over many
lull-worthy
days,
thing.
including today, and they actually get loaded into this door. Why is it closed now? Interesting story. Bats will fly in at night if they don't close
This guy
it.
is
So,
great,
yes,
though.
bats. That's what I said. Let's head over here to talk about all those people.
This is great
who are
for
in line right
broadcasting.
now at voting stations, and don't want to run over Natasha. She's right here. Natasha Gauthier is an Elections Canada spokesperson. So, Natasha, a couple of things. We're seeing long lines in some places in this country. Why is that? Why is it that we're seeing something we don't usually see in elections?
So every election, though, there are lineups in some areas. It's true that we're seeing, maybe more lineups for a little bit longer this time. And this is what we've been
been telling people about since the beginning. You know, because of the precautions we've taken for COVID, so physical distancing in the polling locations, limiting the number of people who can be in the polling locations, having to keep that 2 meters apart, having to sanitize your hands and clean off the surfaces in between electors. All of that takes a little bit more time. So we
don't
really
know
do appreciate people's patience.
the answer to that.
You know, we'll get you your vote and we'll get your ballot.
Okay, we're now in this period of time where
John,
all
somebody.
of those polling stations are really just about to close, less than 30 minutes, or set to close everywhere: Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and then into many parts of the north. What happens to people who are in a line when 9:30 hits, when they're supposed to close in that time zone?
Anybody who's in a line, whether they're inside or outside, when the polls close, will be allowed to vote.
Okay, so stay in line if you're already there. And I should point out, when I say 9:30, of course, that would be Eastern time. It depends on the time zone you're in, but absolutely. And just to give you a sense of what goes on here, they're always ready for the next election. So a lot of these are the kinds of things that would go out for the next election. And hey, of course, if it's another minority, well, they might have to be ready sooner than we all think, Rosie.
Okay, I'm not going through this one, so let's not talk about the next one. Thank you for that. Look out for the bats. That's David Common in Ottawa. At the Elections David Common at Elections Canada, where we haven't had that kind of access to see that stuff behind the scenes, and it sure is fascinating. The other David Cochran's over with his fascinating piece of technology there to give us some updated math on where things stand, David.
You know, Rosie, there's about 68,000 outstanding mail and special ballots from the Atlantic province that are probably in that room with David Common, so that could affect the outcome here now. But we said at the beginning of the night, the Liberals wanted to be at 25 of the 32 seats in Atlantic Canada. Right now, they're sitting at 24, and the Conservatives are at 8. So they're both right on the threshold of where they needed to be.
Yeah, I don't know who's expected to win.
Numbers, but,
I don't want to look it up because it'll dox me. My riding could be in
where things are going to go when the polls open in
Newfoundland.
the next little while. And look, Quebec, this is where the Liberals had dreams of making a big breakthrough, going from the 35 seats that they won in 2019 and maybe getting into the 40s, which could help them get to that majority level. The key battleground to watch is going to be right around here. The island of Montreal is solidly Liberal, was in 2019, but it's these suburbs on the north and south shore where they're going to be in a fight with the Bloc Québécois that we're going to be watching, because that could determine how Quebec is going to go. And there's another more of a three-way fight up here in the Quebec City region, especially where Cabinet Minister landslide Jean-Yves Duclos is trying to hold on to Quebec. Now, Ontario is the most seats. It's with the most Liberals, and the key battleground right now for the Liberals will be to hold on to the Greater Toronto area. This is how it looked in 2019. It is red from Oakville to Whitby, because you'll remember, Rosie, Justin Trudeau went through here beating Doug Ford like a vote piñata to hold on to all of these seats, making the Ontario Premier the central focus of his campaign. Well, now you've got Erin O'Toole trying to make an incursion from the east, saying that it's time for this region to have a prime minister from the GTA, apparently forgetting Stephen Harper was born in Toronto. So it's going to be a two-way battle in the suburbs around Toronto between the Conservatives and the Liberals, with the NDP waging an insurgency inside Toronto, trying to break into what was 100% Liberal last time. And
waging an
outside of the
insurgency,
big
trying to
city,
break
there
into
are the
stuff.
Smaller cities we're going to be paying attention to.
It's popping
Kitchener,
off.
Waterloo, Cambridge, this region went entirely red last time. There's some problems here for the Liberals. They'll start in Kitchener Centre, where they're already
There's some
in
problems.
trouble there. Raj Saini was their candidate there. Ashley Burke, our colleague, did an investigative report on allegations of sexual misconduct against Mr. Saini.
That's not
he
funny.
was disavowed as the Liberal candidate, stepped aside. The Kitchener region in general, these smaller urban centers, they're big compared to Atlantic Canada, small compared to Ontario, but this is where the Conservatives and the Liberals are going to be in big fights outside of the big prize, which is the Greater Toronto area.
Okay, David, that sets us up well for results when they start to
Well,
come in.
all right.
Polls close in just under 15 minutes' time. We're going to go to Kitchener Centre. Halal Ghonaim is there. I believe she's at the Green Party's headquarters there in Kitchener Centre, which may sound surprising, but Halal, this is a place that is on the Green Party's radar.
100%. So I am here at the Green Party event in Kitchener Centre. Supporters are already trickling in, donning the green, and about 200 people have been invited here. And even though people in this building are hoping for a green victory, as you just heard, it could be a toss-up between the Conservatives, the NDPs, or the Greens, and that's largely because there is no incumbent Liberal candidate. Now, Just in the last week, 3 federal party leaders were in this riding, which just goes to show anybody has a chance. And now in Kitchener Centre, the Green Party candidate Mike Morris is trying to capitalize on his efforts from the previous federal election when he was able to boost local Green numbers. He took the party from 4th place to 2nd place. And if he's able to succeed and do that again this year and win, he could be the first elected Green MP in Ontario. Back to you.
Okay, Hala Gunaim, thank you. Appreciate you coming to us from Kitchener Centre tonight. We'll come back to you if things start to unfold in that way. I do want to update people that the Bloc Québécois, who had been on the board there with...
Why am I bad at identifying what silly song that was?
Closes in the same time zone as the Atlantic provinces, is now off the board because now the Liberals are leading in that riding. So that's something to keep your eye on. Let's go over to Adrian.
Yeah, Rosie, it looks like the map is changing in Nova Scotia. The Conservatives, CBC is projecting 2 pickups for the Conservatives of Nova Scotia. Start with Cumberland Colchester. Remember, that was Lenore Zan's riding. She only won it by 500. Look at that lead for Stephen Ellis, the family physician. Looks like he is elected. He is heading to Ottawa. So the next one, South Shore St. Margaret's. That was Minister Bernadette Jordan's riding. She won that by 7,100 before. Rick Perkins has now won it. He is heading to Ottawa with a pretty commanding lead there as well. There's one other riding to keep an eye on, and it's very, very tight right now. This is Sydney Victoria. Jaime Batiste is the incumbent there. He's in the lead. It has been going back and forth all night. It really
Jaime
is threading a rope
instead
with
of Jamie Batiste.
Really interesting note
That's
that the pickups for
good, pronunciation notes for these reporters.
Had some anxiety at the beginning of this campaign. Indeed, that's why lots of political heavyweights were brought in to try and shore up support for some of their candidates. Also now we've got our first Liberal cabinet minister who has been defeated tonight. Let's go to Hannah Thibodeau. She's at the Conservative headquarters in Oshawa. Hannah.
Hey, Rosie, I'm joined
Go to
by Dan
wide
Mayer.
and then
Dan Mayer
in.
is really the architect behind the policy platform and had a policy really throughout this whole campaign. Dan, let's talk about what we're seeing in the Atlantic provinces. A pickup of 5 there. What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure it's great news for you guys.
Look, we feel good so far. It's off to a good start. What we're seeing is a number of the places where our leader campaigned. We're seeing good results. We're seeing some really good pickups of some great candidates. And so, night's off to a good start.
So do you expect this, and you're probably going to say yes to this answer, to go through Quebec and Ontario? In Quebec, what are you looking at there for hopeful pickup? It's between 2 to 4, right, is what you're looking at?
There are always places where we do well. The Quebec City region, some other parts, some of the more rural parts, the eastern parts of the province, and I think there are a few more seats in those areas that we have a good shot at. We had a dedicated Quebec campaign team. We spent a lot of time there traveling around the province. Really had a great team on the ground, and I think we're looking to have that translate into results tonight.
And I think once we hit Ontario, when I was talking to some of you guys behind the scenes, that's where you're really going to have a feel as to whether you guys could win this in the end. Am I right when I'm saying that?
Yeah, look, I mean, as this election, as many of the last few elections, comes down in many ways to the GTA. And, this time we're running with a candidate from the GTA. It'd be the first Prime Minister from the 905. Spent a lot of time there, have a lot of great candidates again in that ring of seats around Toronto. And I think we're all eagerly awaiting the results there and feeling good about how we're, what we've been hearing on the ground there the last few days.
Okay, Dan, I'm sure we'll talk again. Thanks for joining us. And Rosie, I'll send it back to you now.
Okay, Hannah, thank you so much for that perspective. Let's go over to Ian, who's got more results now from New Brunswick.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning of this evening, we said that there were 3 ridings of the 10 in New Brunswick that were too close to call. Well, at this hour, those 3 ridings are still too close to call. Let's start with Fredericton, which has been going back and forth right now. Andrea Johnson is in the lead. If anybody is watching this on their phone and they're in a lineup somewhere in Canada and they're wondering if they should leave that lineup, look at Fredericton. Every vote counts in every riding, but particularly in the close ridings, and this one continues to be very close. But also look at the Greens, right? Yeah. In a kind of third place, distant from the 2 leaders. Let's go on to another one of the ridings that has been considered too close to call, Miramichi Grand Lake. This is a pretty significant lead for Lisa Harris, but what I want you to take a look at is the People's Party. in fourth place, 220 votes. And, you know, if you added that, right now they've kind of doubled their share from last time around in Miramichi Grand Lake. Not that you could add all those votes to the Conservatives, but if you did, suddenly that would be a really, really tight race between two former provincial cabinet ministers who are vying for Miramichi Grand Lake. A Liberal riding that right now they are in the lead. And then look at St. John Rothsay. Wayne Long, described to me by so many people as a great retail politician. When I talked to him earlier today and he said to me he felt good, I thought, you know, everybody I've talked to said that riding is really close. How much of that is maybe he's oblivious? Well, he's not oblivious. He knows exactly what's going on in his riding. Interesting. It'll be interesting to hear from Jerry how he feels about Wayne Long going back to caucus, because he's a guy who's like his independent guy, riding first guy, probably not cabinet material given how he feels about Justin Trudeau, but he is doing very well right now in St. John Rothsay.
Okay, I'll get Jerry to answer that question in just a moment. I will say being nice to the leader probably helps you get into cabinet. That's probably the first thing that you should do. But what Ian demonstrated there with the Miramichi riding is that when you have the People's Party of Canada starting to edge up just a little bit, not to the point where they're going to win the seat, it does create problems for the Conservative Party. And Travis Danraj is in Saskatoon with the People's Party of Canada to talk about that very thing, Travis.
That's right, Rosie. I've got a guest to talk to me a little bit about that, but I got an update for you. As you can see behind me, pretty empty out here in this field right now. That's because I hear the party is inside, and that's where all the media have gone, and that's where most of the supporters are. So Maxime Bernier actually isn't going to do his speech out here. He's going to be doing it inside. And Daniel Tyree is with me right now. He is the executive director for the People's Party of Canada. I want to talk to you about what we have been seeing in Atlantic Canada. How are you feeling about those results? And do you
Executive Director for the PPC.
Some momentum for what you can see in the rest of Canada?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. We always see that the results out in the Maritimes have a big influence on the results across the country as we move across the time zones. Polls are still open on the West Coast. So we're hoping that this will help push us forward and really activate our voters and help them solidify some big numbers across the country.
We've been seeing a lot of these large rallies that are happening in the prairies particularly. Tell me about those specific ridings in Alberta that you think that you can really have a shot of winning.
I think we've been seeing huge rallies across the country. I don't think the other parties could even pull out the numbers that we've been pulling out coast to coast. It's nice to see. But the prairies are definitely the heartland of conservatism and some of the areas we're most confident. I'm looking closely at ridings like Banff Airdrie, like Fort McMurray Cold Lake, for where we can
Are these guys trying to be like the Trumpers of Canada, but they have purple as their main color?
Freedoms and fighting the establishment, but is there one core message that Maxime Bernier has been delivering these past few weeks that is resonating?
I mean, we've seen extreme growth over this last year, and a big part of it has been the absurd actions by governments, provincial, federal, infringing on our constitutional rights. And fortunately, Canadians have a voice in federal politics pushing against these ridiculous restrictions and standing up for our constitutional rights. So that's seen people get disillusioned by the establishment parties, realize that there's deep corruption in all of these larger parties, and look for a new option. And we've been there to welcome them with open arms. We've seen voters from all different stripes, and especially non-voters, getting more involved with the political system, and they see us as their voice, and I'm very proud of that.
Okay, and we got to leave it there. Daniel, appreciate it. You're heading inside. We are heading inside as well. Most of this crowd is maskless. They say that they have a contingency plan if bylaw officers do show up because COVID protocols in this province are broken. They will be moving back outside, Rosie.
Okay, Travis, thank you for that. Just point out that some of the things that the People's Party of Canada is protesting against are, of course, public health measures put in place to keep
Yes to what?
the worldwide pandemic. Lisa, I'll just ask you whether you think there's anything to this notion that the People's Party of Canada could eat in at support, like we saw there with the example in New Brunswick with Miramichi.
Yeah, I don't think it's a direct correlation between the Conservative vote and the PPC vote. I think what the young man said there is true. People from all parties are coming into the PPC as a protest vote. And there's a lot of people who have never voted before who have suddenly decided they want to get out and exercise their franchise. Is it majority of Conservative? Perhaps, but you can't extrapolate one for one what's going on.
PPC thing about the purple
Jerry, I'll
Trumpers.
come back to you on that point. We've got 4 minutes now till polls close from Quebec to Alberta. So let's go over to Andrew with some final results or some more results from PEI.
Oh, no, final is exactly the right word. Yeah, so I'm going to show you 3 ridings, 3 check marks, 3 Liberal candidates with good news tonight, starting with Egmont. So Bobby Morrissey winning his 3rd term here. The Conservative candidate,
Barry
Balsam,
Balsam.
did not win, but
It's a great
he
name.
owns one of the largest apple orchards on the island, and
Wow.
no election can take that away from him. We'll go to Charlottetown, where a man of many provinces, Sean Casey, a born
Not unless I
Newfoundland,
win
raised
against
in
him.
Brunswick, ran for a seat
Start a
in
new
PEI.
law that no one
He'll be
named
going to
Barry
Ottawa
whatever
for
shall
the
have any
Greens,
orchards.
in 4th place in that riding, so that's notable. But also notable that the Conservatives are in 2nd. They've actually increased their share of vote in every single riding in Prince Edward Island tonight, so that's worth mentioning. But hey, as we go to this last riding here, Malpeque, Wayne Easter's success lives on in Heath MacDonald for the Liberals. But once again, the Greens, they would have hoped to have a stronger showing than they have here. Anna Keenan in 3rd place, but this is a Liberal sweep of PEI, all 4 ridings going red.
Okay, so good news for the Liberals, and as you say, for the Green Party, they're actually down 10 percentage points in PEI, a place that where you would have thought there could have been possibly some support. Let's take a look here at the share of vote in Atlantic Canada. That tells part of the story, certainly. The Liberals still ahead, but the Conservatives have pulled up, as Andrew said there, their share of support across Atlantic Canada, and that's why you will also see this in the seat change, which we will show you now. That is something that will be encouraging to Conservatives as we leave Atlantic Canada. Let me show you the seat change now. Takes just a moment to pop up. Okay, so the Liberals down 3 so far anyway, because not everything, of course, has been confirmed. The Conservatives up 5, and the NDP, they are not on the board at all tonight. They seem to have lost St. John's East, and the Greens are down 1 as well. We are 2 minutes away from polls closing from Quebec through to Alberta. There are 260
We'll most likely get bored soon.
begin reporting. That means that this map on the floor, well, it's going to become a lot bigger, but it's also going to start to be painted in many different colors as things start to close. That's a lot of seats at stake in a lot of provinces that have become key battlegrounds in this election.
'Cause I'm hungry.
Ontario, where you saw both the Liberal and Conservative leader in the last days of this campaign trying to make inroads there again. Okay, let's go now to Toronto Danforth. Davenport, my apologies, Davenport, where Janella Massa is standing by at the NDP office. Janella.
That's right. We're in the Davenport riding just west of the downtown core in Toronto, where the NDP are hoping that they might be able to take this seat from the Liberals. We are at the campaign office for Alejandra Bravo, who's hoping to unseat the Liberal incumbent, Julie Derwitz. And, this is a riding that has been Liberal for most of the time, with the exception of 2015, when the NDP took the most seats in their history, and they were able to win this seat and hold on to it not for very long, and went back to the Liberals in 2019 during that Liberal wave. So with the polls closing in just a few moments, we will watch and wait to see if the NDP will be able to take that from the Liberals. I'll send it back to you, Rosie.
Okay, thanks so much, Janella Massa. I know that is certainly one that the Liberals were a little bit worried about. If there's any to be worried about inside the Toronto ridings, that was one that was certainly on their radar. But the Liberals leave Atlantic Canada in decent shape. Yes, they have lost seats, but they are still not probably at a place where they are worrying too much. The Conservatives, though, they've had some pickups. And if you're trying to form government, you've got to start picking up early and often. And so polls closing now from Quebec all the way to Alberta, 262 ridings starting to report right now.
I would have to say Liberal in my area.
Of votes coming all at once. Polls closed just seconds ago in Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, the Northwest Territories,
Yep.
and Nunavut. 262 more seats to add to the count. These results will set the trend.
Dang, it has.
Hello, everybody.
It is
This
set on
is
like
the
chat
Votes
delay
2021.
0 seconds.
I'm Rosemary Barton. This is the map of Canada at this hour. As you can see, we've had results from Atlantic Canada that leave you with what you see at the bottom of your screen there. The only 2 colors on that map right now, red and dark blue. Nothing else filled in yet. No other parties on the board. But we do know that there are some very early results from Ontario as we await now results from Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories, and of course, Nunavut. I would never forget you. Ian, some of the numbers we're seeing there may be surprising to people, and that's because we had some early results go in from Elections Canada.
Yeah, lightning quick, right? So I guess these were advanced ballots that were accidentally inputted before the polls were closed. You didn't want to mention the riding because you didn't want to unduly affect things while the polls were open. But Brampton East, we can now name it. We can now tell you that it was Brampton East. So not many votes there. Maninder Sidhu is the incumbent. He won in 2019 by a big margin. And at this point, of course, everyone can see very few votes counted. But it is the first Ontario riding to officially have a vote count.
Okay, and it starts to explain why those numbers may not have matched up for you if you were counting the numbers coming out of Atlantic Canada. Very few votes were inputted at this point. So let's go back to that one riding that is the Quebec riding that is reporting, because it is in the Atlantic time zone, and Andrew's in charge of that one.
Yeah, so this has been such an interesting race. And, you know, over the last, I guess, hour or so that we've been watching the result here, it's been flipping back and forth between Liberal and Bloc. And here on my computer, I have this really interesting way of visualizing it where we see it as a sort of curvy graph. And it looks like, you know, like a DNA double helix strand, how the two things keep just crossing over each other. Anyways, a small pleasure that I have access to that I can't show anyone at home. But Gaspésie, you can see the Liberal candidate right now in the lead. One of the reasons why it's been so
I think the delay is pretty normal.
It's a difficult part of the province to campaign in, right? It's such a large area. It's a very rural area, very beautiful, mind you, but you almost literally have to campaign in that place, you know, town by town, issue by issue. And here's another riding that we've got, Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. We can see very early results, a lead of 12, nothing to boast about, but nothing to be sad about either. And Peter Schiffke in Vaudreuil-Soulanges. This is just off the island of Montreal, and the western tip of Montreal, I should say.
My projections.
Pretty sizable lead, given it's only one poll reporting.
Okay, there are 78 seats up for grabs in Quebec, and certainly
I project that
mostly
they'll all have a good time.
And the Bloc Québécois, Jerry, why don't you weigh in?
We'll all have a lot of fun.
Really felt the English debate hampered them because it helped the Bloc. That may be the case, but I'm not sure you're going to put all of your mistakes on one event. But it did allow an opening for the Bloc, and I wonder how concerned they are about that tonight.
Yeah, I think they're very concerned. There's no doubt that a lot of the majority hopes were pinned on winning new seats in Quebec. In my experience with Quebec elections, there tend to be clarifying moments toward the end of the campaign, and that was certainly one of them. It didn't help any of the non-Bloc Québécois parties on that stage.
Yeah, and we should point out that Yves-François Blanchet at the beginning of the campaign actually was not having a super great campaign. He was a couple of times being criticized for being arrogant and difficult with reporters, but he still had that goal of 40 seats. I don't know if he'll, I think it's unlikely he reaches that tonight.
Well, one of the things that people in the rest of Canada don't realize about Quebec is that people actually turn out to vote in Quebec. So whereas in the rest of the country you have to spend a lot of your resources trying to get people to the polls, you have to spend fewer of them doing that in Quebec, and it's more of a persuasion game.
Yeah.
If you look at the 2019 campaign, for instance, Yves-François Blanchet was not even really on the radar screen until the TVA debate,
That's right.
where he put himself very firmly on the radar screen.
So,
he's an excellent debater
and listen, a skilled politician too, because when you see an opening, you take it. That's how you start to see advantages. Okay, we remember polls have closed now from Quebec all the way to Alberta. 262 seats have started to report. So this is when things get real. This is sometimes when elections get called, but remember, things are very close in this election. We may not know the ball game by the time we are finished with all of these provinces. What we do know also, though, is that lines continue to be long, particularly in urban settings like Toronto and Montreal, where polls have been moved around a bit or stuck all in one bigger area in order to help people physically distance. Thomas Daigle is in one of those lines or at one of those lines with people who are still waiting. Polls closed, Thomas, but I think they are still allowed to vote. Is that correct?
They are still allowed to vote. If you lined up in the past few minutes before the 9:30 p.m. Eastern cutoff here in Toronto, let's follow the lineup, then these people are being told they are going to be able to vote. Though, anyone who is just lining up now, they're being told it's a 2 to 3 hour wait just to get to the front of the line. And I can tell you from speaking to the people in the front of the line, yeah, 2 hours is the absolute minimum. We can't really get all the way to the front right now, but we can show you. This is the Spadina Fort York riding. This is the Fort York historic site in downtown Toronto.
Okay, yeah.
The lineup.
Yeah, you can change the stream latency on YouTube. That would be what does it for you, but can only do it between streams.
Elections Canada having to find locations where people
No
can
worries.
ensure physical distancing. For Elections Canada having trouble to find staff. The result is this. These pictures, which I think are going to be the defining moments, certainly of Election Day here in Toronto and probably some other cities, where the number of polling stations have been cut. The lineups are huge. Rosie.
Okay, Thomas Degla, thank you for that. We'll check back with you to see how that's progressing. I will just say again, though, that we are all now much better used to waiting in lines for things because of the pandemic. And if you're going to wait in line for anything, my gosh, it should be democracy. Okay, Ian, over to you.
Well, especially when we look at how close some of these ridings have been.
No,
I was talking about Fredericton earlier
donuts.
on. In Ontario, we are starting to get some results. Let's take a look. We're going to just jump around the provinces as we see these. Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing. Not many votes to count there, and really what people should note is Carol Hughes in third place now with so few votes counted. I mean, she has been the incumbent there for the NDP for I think the last 4 elections, and I think she's the person we should keep our eyes on as more votes get counted. Northumberland, Peterborough South, and there you see a lead of 1, and again just small numbers, but we want to show you these. The Conservative Philip Lawrence, who's in third place at this point, is the incumbent. One more I want to show you is Nickel Belt, Mark Serre. Like Dominic LeBlanc, his father was in the Pierre Trudeau government. He has been in the Justin Trudeau government, and 2 terms I think he's won, and in the early lead in Nickel Belt right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Some early results coming from Ontario. Where am I going next here? I'm going over to Adrian. I'm sorry.
That's
Just
all
wave.
right. I
Just
missed
wave
you.
when I didn't
That's
know.
all right. Listen, you're a Manitoba gal, so we thought we would start
Thank you.
with one from Manitoba for you. Selkirk Interlake Eastman, which is just north of Winnipeg. So James Bazan, he is the incumbent. He is in the lead so far. Keep an eye on the PPC down there in, I guess, 4th place so far. And we've got a few more coming in. I think we have Kildonan St. Paul. Kildonan St. Paul.
Nice.
I know we don't
No,
have a
that's
graphic.
it
We've
for
got our
now, but
Canada
keep an eye on it.
flavored
It's only a majority of one vote,
slideshow and
so
everything, just for
I was in
the heck
James
of it.
Bazan's riding over the summer, going to a beach. So there you go.
As you do.
That's what it does. That's my only Manitoba story so far. Andrew, over to you. The
Yes.
Greens are on the board.
Yeah, well, we've got some Quebec results coming in right now. So let me start with those, starting with Honoré Mercier on the island of Montreal. We heard from Pablo Rodriguez a little bit earlier in the program saying he was optimistic. He's certainly got reason to be optimistic in this riding in particular. He won it by a whopping 40 percentage points in 2019. No surprise to see him in the lead right now. Moving to Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. The Liberal candidate here won by 50 percentage points in the last election. And so another non-surprise. Let's go on to Abitibi-Témiscamingue. This was a Bloc Québécois seat in 2019. You can see the Bloc with a lead right now. It would be something of a surprise. I mean, the Liberals are pretty close right now. It would be a bit of a surprise if they would be able to flip this riding. The Bloc won this riding pretty convincingly in 2019, and they were expected to do so in this election as well. But let's finish with Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavut, EU. This very early results, as you can see. An NDP win here would be a surprise. This was very much a Liberal target at the outset of the campaign. They thought they could win in this riding. At a recent all-candidates debate, reconciliation and the environment, 2 really big issues in this very large riding with a large Indigenous population as well. The Liberals felt that they were fielding a very strong candidate in Lise Kistabish, Anishinaabe of the Pikagun First Nation. So we'll see how that riding shapes up. It's one that I'm definitely keeping a close eye on over the course of the evening.
Great, thank you for that, Andrew. And I should point out the green on the board there is actually in Quebec. So let me show you where that is playing out. Again, early results right now, but that is in the riding of Gatineau, where you can see a small lead there for the Green Party. NDP not on the board there at all, but Jagmeet Singh is in British Columbia, of course, watching results as they come in. There he is with his wife watching results. Look It's so much brighter.
I'm way
in
too busy
Florida
downloading
because polls
funny
are
Canada
not
images to
closed.
pay
It's
the
not very
slightest
well
amount of
yet.
attention to
Many
this.
people still voting in British Columbia. As we wait for more results to come in through the biggest swath of ridings, the biggest number of votes that we are going to get in this country over the next couple of hours that could, and I really say could, determine the government, because that may not be the case tonight. Ian, over to you.
We're just jumping around Ontario as we have these early results, and let's start in Niagara Centre. What's interesting about this riding is not the results at this point with so few votes, but the fact that Niagara Centre last time around, Vince Badaway, the incumbent, but three parties all did very well here. 35% for the Liberals, 31% for the Conservatives, 27% for the NDP. So we'll be looking at Niagara Centre through the evening to see if there's any movement there, but the incumbent Liberal is in first place very early on. Simcoe North, we have, this was a riding that was held by Bruce Stanton for years, I think dating back to 2006. And now we have Adam Chambers, who is the Conservative candidate, and again in a small lead early on. I want to show you one more. Patty Hajdu, the health minister, who obviously has had such a high profile during the pandemic. Again, early minutes there, but in the lead in Thunder Bay, Superior North. Rosie.
Okay, early results here in Ontario, but remember, Ontario has 121 seats, so an important province to keep an eye on, particularly because we know that the leaders pay a lot of attention to all those ridings in Ontario. Look at where we are so far. Again, these are early reports coming in from many different provinces. The Liberals leading in 40, the Conservatives at 16, the Bloc at 4, the NDP now finally on the board with 1, and the Greens leading in 1. All of these still early, so those numbers on the bottom of your screen likely to change a few more times. While I have them, though, I am going to talk to At Issue, because I didn't want them to, go off and do something else while they're all at their remote locations. Andrew, why don't I start with you? So, I mean, the story that we have so far anyway from Atlantic Canada is that the Conservatives are the only ones who have picked up seats. Anything that you make of that so far?
Well, the seat count for the Tories coming out of Atlantic Canada of 9, maybe 10, is certainly at the top edge of previous forecasts before the election. It's consistent, I think, still with a minority Liberal government, but the more interesting thing to me is the popular vote numbers. The Tories are about 4 or 5 points higher than the consensus of the polls had indicated in Atlantic Canada. The People's Party is significantly lower than they were forecast to have. The NDP is slightly lower as well. The Liberals are a little bit higher. So it does suggest that maybe the two main parties in this very tight race have succeeded in getting people to migrate back to them who might have voted for smaller parties. But we'll see whether that trend holds up across the country.
That's a really good observation, Elamine, because it does mean that those closing arguments by Erin O'Toole and Justin Trudeau that, the only way to get a government was to vote for them might be working.
Right. I mean, to that end, I was looking at that NDP number, and it is closer to their floor than it is to their ceiling. And the fact that it is there, that at least suggests for now that, the NDP support in the last few days, if not cratering, then kind of like at least kind of leveling off at a pretty even level. And so that is to say that the Liberals may have been succeeding in that argument they've been making for the last week, which is a vote for us will prevent a Conservative government, and everybody else has kind of been shut out.
Yeah, which is always the argument that Liberals make, particularly at the end of campaigns, Chantal. I don't know whether you draw that conclusion this early on.
I learned at my expense never to draw conclusions based on Atlantic Canada outcomes, and let me tell you why.
Please do.
And how 1997, Jean Chrétien, EI reform, very unpopular in Atlantic Canada, lots of losses. If you had looked at the results from Atlantic Canada that night, Jean Chrétien was certainly not winning another majority government. And then that wave stopped. And as you know, he won a majority government. Another point, yes, the Conservative popular vote is up, but part of it, from everything I can see and hear from people of the region, is that the Conservatives did get a boost from that Conservative victory in Nova Scotia, which happened just as the election was being called. So I mean, feel free to extrapolate, but I'll pass until I have more.
And it's interesting that you bring up 1997 because that's, of course, the benchmark that we use for the lowest percentage that was ever won in order to form a majority. 1997, also a Liberal who called a snap election at a time when people didn't think it was right. Manitoba was dealing with those catastrophic floods at the time. Althea, what do you think Liberals, because you're at Liberal headquarters, what do you think they would make of where they're at coming out of Atlantic Canada?
I don't think they're too worried, frankly. I think one of the things that we are going to notice this year, perhaps more than in the past, is the importance of local contest in the sense that, there was a lot of anger around the government about the fisheries dispute. We saw that with the fisheries minister seeming to take a hit. But you can see that in a swath of 905 ridings, in southwestern Ontario ridings as well, where in some cases there's no Liberal candidate or the Liberal candidate has been disavowed, or there's just no incumbents. So I think that we're going to have there's a lot of strong local candidates who might swing things in one direction or another that are not necessarily tied to the performance of the party leaders, and that's something that we'll need to keep an eye out on.
Okay, I'll let you guys go back to studying the results and the numbers, and you then can come back and I'll force you to extrapolate as needed. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. That is at issue with us throughout the evening. Ian, I think you have some results, do you?
I'm trying to text friends, and then you want me to actually report results? Sure.
Can we do that later?
I can do that for you. Let's see. Maybe we have Elgin, Middlesex, London is the first one. We're going to, Beaches, East York. This is interesting because Nathaniel Erskine Smith, who, a couple of interesting things about him. First of all, he describes himself as a thoughtful, independent voice in Ottawa and maybe part of the same section of the caucus, Liberal caucus, that Wayne Long from St. John Rothsay belongs to. I'm still, teasing you. I know. You'll get a chance to talk about that, Jerry. Let's look at Elgin, Middlesex, London, Karen Vecchio, Conservative incumbent, and early leads. And just so for people watching at home, I fully understand that these are early leads. But here's one that I think is interesting, is Ottawa South. David McGuinty, he's part of the McGuinty political dynasty in Ottawa South. Eli Tanis in first place. Listen, just before we go here, Rosie, I do want to go back to Beaches, East York for a moment. One of the interesting things there, people might remember, Lisa Robinson, the Conservative candidate, in second right now. She no longer is part of the Conservative Party, I don't think. I think that they said that they kind of distanced themselves from her. So I'm not sure if those votes are advance polls before that happened, or people that came in today and voted for her. We're going to hear that theme again with a few other ridings and candidates who are no longer associated with their party, even though they're on the ballot. But just wanted to flag that in Beaches, East York.
Okay, good. Yeah, because there's a couple other examples of that in Ontario that we will get to. Andrew, you've got some results coming in from Quebec.
Yeah, here, I was just checking results on my laptop. You want me to report on...
I want you to talk out loud. All the results to all of us now.
Yeah, I guess we should all do our jobs here. So let me take you to Bécancour, Nicolas Sorel. This is a riding right around Trois-Rivières, just between Montreal and Quebec City. Louis Plamondon in the lead, Dean of the House, current longest-serving member of the House of Commons, MP since 1984. He wouldn't mind taking this seat once again. If we go to Lac-Saint-Jean, Alexis Brunel-Duceppe. Speaking of dynasties, this is Gilles Duceppe's son. So he's in the lead right now. Again, these are all small numbers, but a small lead of 16 votes. And Many-Couagan, we have also another Bloc Québécois candidate with a lead, Marilyn Gill. This riding, it's no surprise to see her in the lead. It's gone Bloc in 8 of the last 9 elections, the only exception being 2011, that orange wave when this riding went NDP. But in the last election, no other candidate came close to beating her. She won that one. She may win it again tonight. We'll see.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's just check the bottom of the screen there. Liberals are leading in 47 ridings, Conservatives in 22. Bloc on the board with 6, the NDP at 6, and the Greens, I believe that's still a lead in the riding of Gatineau in Quebec. So we'll keep watching that one to see if there's something to that, because again, these are very early results coming in right across the country, and Adrian's in charge of the prairies.
Yeah, and I'm not texting anybody, so,
I'll text you later.
I was texting you.
Exactly. I was not answering. I saw it bouncing. Okay, let's go back to your favorite province, Manitoba. Brandon Souris. So there we go. Larry Maguire, he is the incumbent. It's only one poll, but already a lead of 51. Staying in No, let's go over to Alberta. Kelly McCauley, again, this is the incumbent, a lead of 54, just one poll reporting, but not very far away in Edmonton. When you have the riding of Edmonton Centre, this is one to keep an eye on because it's only a lead of 4, but Randy Boissonnault is taking the lead so far against James Cumming. They've gone back and forth. These two men used to train together. Their offices are across the street from each other. But this is one where Chrystia Freeland showed up early. This is one that the Liberals have their eye on, one of those cities in Alberta that they'd like to make a change in.
And Randy Boissonnault has won it before, so he's hoping that he can do it again. Here's the beginning of what the map is filling in as. Again, these are early results, so some of those colors are going to bounce around a little bit as we get more results in from Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Manitoba, and then up north as well as those results come in. Liberals leading in 54, Conservatives at 25. All right, we do have reporters in the prairies, in different parts of the prairies, who are standing by to bring us the stories as they unfold. But let's start with Cam McIntosh. He's in, well, my home. Everyone's giving shout outs to their home cities, so I may as well. Cam, you're in Winnipeg. What are you watching for there tonight?
Well, Rosie, welcome back to Winnipeg, where masks are still mandatory out here on our restaurant patio. We are getting some evidence, and we are hearing that there are still some people waiting in line to vote. We'll keep an eye on that as that progresses through the evening here. We're in Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley. That's basically the west end of Winnipeg. This is one of 3 or 4 seats that the Conservatives and Liberals both believe are in play for them. The Liberals took the seat in 2015, lost it in 2019 when they lost their majority. That old Liberal MP is trying to get his old job back. Doug Elifson running against Marty Morantz, a former city councillor here in Winnipeg. This is one of 3 rematches between the Liberals and the Conservatives from 2019 tonight.
We got a few friends to come watch the election with us.
Keep an eye on is Winnipeg South. It is a true bellwether. It has gone with the party that makes up the government ever since 1998, so that's 9 straight elections. This could be the 10th. It's one of the reasons why Liberal leader Justin Trudeau was in here late last night.
Oh, he's here.
Trying to shore up
He's here
support
right
in the
now.
4 seats that the Liberals hold here in Winnipeg. But if there's one thing that might be a little bit concerning to the Liberal campaigns, it's this. Over the last little bit, there's been some polling done in Winnipeg, and basically it shows the people that are the most frustrated with this election call right now are Liberal voters here in Winnipeg. Rosemary?
Okay, Cam, that's some good context as we get more results in from Manitoba. Appreciate that. Remember, Issa, you're in Saskatchewan. You're at a Conservative headquarters. Tell us what you'll be watching for there.
Well, Rosemary, Saskatchewan, of course, in the last election was a huge Conservative stronghold. The party swept all 14 seats, so it'll be interesting to see how it does, how the party does this year. If Erin O'Toole has any chance of becoming, if he hopes to become the next Prime Minister of Canada, he can't afford to lose any of those seats right here in Saskatchewan. So it'll be interesting to see. Of course, Saskatchewan is right now in the middle of a 4th wave of COVID-19, and we've seen huge levels of hospitalization as well as record numbers of COVID-19 cases. So this election is happening at the back with that in the backdrop. So it'll be interesting to see how that will play out.
Omaraya Issa in Saskatchewan, thank you so much for doing that. Appreciate it. Another place, of course, grappling with a very difficult 4th wave because of some decisions made in that province is in Alberta. Carolyn Dunn is in Calgary Skyview at this hour. Carolyn.
Right, and it's that 4th wave that you're talking about is exactly why we are here at George Chahal's Liberal campaign event, if you will. It's one of very few that are going on, and as you can see, it's being held in a parking lot. So right behind me here is a lot of media who are here just to have an opportunity to be in and amongst voters and volunteers and campaigners as they, hear the results coming in. This is one of the battlegrounds in Calgary, one of 3. The incumbent, Jag Sahota, is trying to hang on to her seat. She's a lawyer. You might remember her name from being on the Status of Women Committee. She is being challenged by George Chahal. He is a very well-known name in this riding and the neighborhoods that are within it because he was a city councillor for 4 years. One of the things that we are watching for too in this riding is Harry Dillon, who is with the PPC. It might be the only riding in urban Alberta where we see the PPC actually having an effect on the outcome. Two other ridings that we are watching for, Calgary Centre and Calgary Confederation, both of them too close to call at this point, but we're going to be monitoring it for you and bringing you the results and hopefully some reaction as we can get it in this fourth wave that is hitting this province so brutally.
Okay, Carolyn Dunn, thank you so much for that. You're in Calgary tonight. Appreciate it. We will, of course, come back to you. Let's give you a sense of the vote share at this point in the evening nationally. Now, I want to do that with a big, big caveat, and that is that right now there's not a lot of results coming from Saskatchewan, coming from Manitoba, and coming from Alberta. So that means that that Conservative number, which is right now at 32, is probably going to track upwards. In case Conservatives saw that and had a panic, your base and your heartland is still to come on the board there. But let's look at some of the other numbers you see. Listen, the People's Party of Canada registering ahead of the Green Party at 4.5%. That is something to note there, and certainly an improvement on where they were in the last election in 2019. Maybe we can see a seat change. Are we going to do that here too? Yes, we will. So seat change at this hour. And again, these are not all confirmed. Things are still coming in. So these are more a sense of the leading in seats right now. But you can see the seat change, again, very early, plus 7 for the Liberals. But remember, plus 17. If they increase by 17, they would be tracking towards a majority. A majority for anyone here tonight would be 170 seats. I don't think we're at a place yet where we have any sense of what's happening, but let's keep an eye on that. There are 62 seats with a 100-vote margin, and that's why I say early hours, everyone. Let's just see how things unfold very slowly, and Andrew will give us some more results now to give us a sense of what.
Yeah, it was a Liberal +7 that you had just seen on that graphic. Yeah, so I'll tell you. I mean, that could be something of a precarious +7, and I'll show you why. So one of the ridings that I want to show you is the riding of Joliette. This is on the North Shore of Montreal. A Liberal lead is kind of an interesting result here so far because the Bloc have owned this riding for an awfully long time. But I will say that the Liberals at the outset of this campaign, they did say that they wanted to expand their ring of influence around the island of Montreal, try to capture some of those South Shore and North Shore ridings. So this would certainly meet that goal. Going to the riding of Mirabel, this is also an interesting one. Early results, so a Liberal lead here. I mean, take that for what it's worth. But the Bloc Québécois candidate who had been the person who had won the riding in 2019, Simon Marcil, there was actually some controversy around that candidate, around undisclosed leave, and so that candidate not running. So this is something of an open race with no incumbent, and we can see the Bloc Québécois candidate in second in that riding. And then we have this, Berthier-Maskinongé, Ruth Ellen Brosseau, a pretty well-known name, sort of famously went on vacation to Vegas in 2011, was something of a parachute candidate when she actually won the riding in 2011 on that orange wave, won again in 2015, lost by the narrowest of margins in 2019 to the Bloc Québécois candidate, under 3 percentage points, really, really tight margin, and announced mid-campaign in 2021 that she's back. She wants to run again, and so here she is with a tiny lead.
Tiny. Those are some hard-fought ridings there. I will say the Liberals are up 3 here, leading in 3 as we move out of this part of the country. That is encouraging. That would be encouraging if you were a Liberal sitting at home watching these numbers. I'll quickly get Sarah to weigh in. I didn't even tell you I was coming to you. I'll quickly get you to weigh in on the leading 11 for the NDP. I mean, the NDP is probably waiting for British Columbia, which is closing in 30 seconds here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's exciting to be back on the board. I mean, at one point we weren't even on there, and to see 11 up there and to have many of those seats be in Ontario, which is a battleground for us. It's great to see this happening and encouraging results. And of course, we're waiting for what's happening in BC.
Yeah, okay, and many three-way races in British Columbia. But here, take a look at the board at this hour as we wait for British Columbia polls to close. That will add between BC and Yukon, because that's there too, 43 more seats as they start to report across the country. And we get a better sense of what government Canada has chosen. That all starts right now. Okay, you are looking at beautiful British Columbia. It is beautiful. Where polls have just closed in British Columbia in 42 ridings. You add in the Yukon with one more, and we're up to 43 more ridings coming your way. All polls have now closed right across the country from east to west and coast to coast to coast. We know some people are still waiting in line. If that is the case for you anywhere in the country, stay in that line. Elections Canada says you will be allowed to vote. Voting matters. We know the race was close going in, and so your vote will count here. Ian Hannah-Mansing has been tracking Ontario for us through the evening. Again, early results, but Ian, what are you seeing?
Well, one of the things we're keeping an eye on in Ontario is where there may be the potential for change, understanding that we're still very early on in the vote counting. But let's take a look at 3 ridings where we're seeing that potential for change. Kenora, the incumbent here, the Conservative, Eric Malilo, he was the youngest Conservative MP ever elected, just 21 years old in 2019. Janine Seymour is an Indigenous lawyer and activist, and that is a pretty big lead, even with so few votes counted. Let's look at Dufferin Caledon now. This has been a solidly Conservative riding dating back to 2004. David Tilson, the longtime MP there. Kyle Seaback won here in 2019 with 42% of the vote. Early, I know, but interesting that he's in second place. And Haldeman Norfolk, look at Leslyn Lewis, the leadership candidate for the Conservatives, in second place. And that's an interesting one to watch. Diane Finley was the Conservative MP here for 6 straight terms. You would think that would be a pretty solid Conservative riding, and it may still be. It's still early. But in terms of, you look at the numbers at the bottom of the screen and you wonder, where's that change coming? Well, right now, it's those 3 ridings, among others.
Yeah, really strong MP for that part of Ontario, a very beloved MP for the Conservative Party, certainly. So her retirement was disappointing, but we'll see whether they can hang on to it. David, you're back at your board there with a state of play. I don't know what we're seeing yet, and whether we can determine anything. So give us a sense of what you see.
Well, Rosie, you know how British Columbia always complained that we'd have the election call before the polls close out there? Welcome to the party, British Columbia. You're not the empty net goal of election 2021. Look, the Atlantic right now, we said the Liberals needed to be at 25. They're at 23, so they're down a little bit there, though some of these ridings are still a little bit too close to call, but the Conservatives are up at 9. We're going to go into Quebec. The challenge we have right now in doing a proper assessment of the state of the race is that we only have reports from 39 of the 78 ridings in Quebec. And when you go to the Greater Montreal area, look at all this gray that we still have on the board. I mean, this is the big battleground between the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois, so we don't yet have a clear sense of what is happening there. I'm going to assume that it's a situation like what we're seeing here in Ontario, where if we go into the Greater Toronto area, which is the big two-way battle here on the suburbs of Toronto between the Liberals and the Conservatives. Look at this. We have seen reports of long lines, people there well past voting being closed. Thomas has been showing us that people are lining up for hours to wait. So, like, absolutely no results to speak of from these key battlegrounds. So, I mean, this, just to show you 2019 again, to remind you, I mean, look how liberal this was, from Whitby down to Oakville and Burlington. Now, we've got little specks of blue in places like Mississauga Lakeshore, but the results are so early, it's impossible to draw any conclusions from them, but we are seeing a lot of orange in northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba. I mean, these look gigantic, but these are single ridings. And we're also seeing a speck of it right here in Saskatoon University. So the problem is, Rosie, is these are the areas where the NDP want to gain, the urban prairies in particular, northern Ontario, northern Saskatchewan hold here, but there is so much vote still to come, so much still to be counted. And even out here in Atlantic Canada, Rosie, I have to underline this point. There are tens of thousands of mail ballots and maybe even advance polls still not counted across this region. Some of these races are tight. So while normally by this time of the night, these numbers are locked in, there's still some seats there that could change based on what happens when they start opening the mail tomorrow and counting those votes.
Okay, David, thank you for giving us a state of play. Part of that state of play right now is that in about 91 ridings at this hour. It is a divide of about 100 votes. So that gives you a sense of how close this is in many, many places. I would also say that we've got lots of urban ridings reporting, which is usually to the benefit of the Liberals. Fewer rural ridings are reporting, which is usually of the benefit to the Conservatives. So keep all that in mind as you look at those numbers at the bottom of your screen. This is far from over or determined at this stage. British Columbia, the polls have now closed, 43 seats there with the Yukon as well. And Renee Filippone is in British Columbia. I think she's in Vancouver to tell us what she'll be watching for as the polls have closed there, Renee.
Well, Rosie, there are long lines at some polling stations, but not here. They were able to close the door a minute after polls closed in Vancouver, Granville. This is a very interesting riding to watch. It's really the only one at play in the city, the others being very safe Liberal and NDP seats. This is the seat of Jody Wilson-Raybould, who won under the Liberals in 2015 by a large margin, and then she was embroiled in the SNC-Lavalin affair, booted from caucus, and then won as an independent in 2019 with 17,000 votes. So the question tonight is, where will those 17,000 votes go in this riding? Will it go to the Liberal candidate, Tlaib Nur Mohammed, who was just behind her in the last election, or the Conservatives or the NDP? For the Conservatives, if they can take this riding, this would be their first riding in the city of Vancouver since 2011, and the NDP are hoping this could be a place where they could pick up some seats tonight. Rosie?
Okay, Renee, that's lots of interesting things happening in that riding. That was the good one to choose. We'll come back to as we know more. Let me show you just quickly the map of Canada as we will wait to get some results from Andrew in just a minute in Quebec. But this is what it's starting to look like. But again, as we say, the colors here on this map, they're going to switch around a little bit and fill in because the results are very close in a lot of different places. But you can see it starting to fill in. And Andrew's going to tell us how it's filling in Quebec, Andrew.
Yeah, so for the Liberals to have a good night, they need to pick up ridings, but also hold the ridings that they won in 2019. Right. And so we're going to take a look at some of those examples. So Pontiac is a riding that the Liberals did win. There's no incumbent here.
Might go
in this
out.
Riding.
I'm
Will
getting
Davis
bored
was
and hungry.
The MP for this riding who infamously appeared naked in a hybrid parliamentary session in April. Yeah, as my colleagues are reminding me twice.
Sorry, what?
That happened. But he's not running in this, this riding, but the Liberals with a small lead at the moment. We'll see if that can hold. Next up, we've got the riding of Saint-Maurice Champlain, a cabinet minister, François-Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. His margin of victory, just as a side note here, in 2015 was much wider than it was in 2019.
Yeah,
in 2015, he won by
I
about
guess
12,000 votes. Subsequent election 2019, he only won by about
for a second.
3,000 votes. So,
the road,
this
that
close
is.
race last time around, we'll continue to watch.
So
this
yeah,
riding, this time around.
Thanks
Finally,
for watching.
Here is a Liberal pickup if this result
Good luck
holds,
out there.
but who knows?